My name is Terry Jackson, and I've been a ham radio operator for, well, let's see, about 52 years. And as in most hams, I haven't been active all those 52 years, but I would come in and out. And the suggestion I would have is not to let it lapse beyond where you'd have to take a test again. I wouldn't want to do that. So I always had my renewals in line. I worked for the what was called the Naval Security Group, and they were taking a direction from the National Security Agency, the NSA in Fort Meade, Maryland. So I'm probably one of, if not the only person you've actually met that made money copying Morse code. So what we did is we were in those days we were copying Russian high-speed Morse code, and we did it in Cyrillic alphabet. The Russians used what's called a Cyrillic alphabet. It had seven more characters than we have in our alphabet. So we typed on what was called a mill, but it's like a typewriter. But we had those seven other characters on the mill, and it was also always all capitals, so it was easy to kind of see afterwards. But we were Russian high-speed Morse code intercept operators. I did this from 1966 through 1969.
Oh,
And
okay.
at that time, I lived in a place called Bremerhaven, Germany. I lived on the shore duty in Bremerhaven, Germany. So for a guy that was in the Naval Security Group and living in Germany on shore, it was really a pretty good gig. Well, after I came home and finished all that, I went on to college and I became an employee of the Environmental Protection Agency. And I moved to Ely, Minnesota, where I live now. And it's right in the middle of the wilderness area, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And when the EPA left about 10 years after I worked for them, I decided to stay here because our family started, and I became the utilities and public works manager for the city of Ely. So that's kind of what I've done. That's kind of my background, Elijah.
Okay, thank you for that, Terry.
Mhm.
How did you get interested in ham radio?
Well, I knew about Navy Mars when I was living in Germany, and I always thought that was interesting. So I pursued it when I came home. And in order to be a Mars member, you need to be a ham radio operator. So I went to a local college and learned all I had to learn about electricity, and of course the Morse code came good for me. That wasn't any problem. I think I forgot to mention, but we were copying Russians in the neighborhood of 45 to 65 words per minute.
Oh,
That,
wow.
that was all done before computers, before readers and that kind of thing. We did it by typing. But it was interesting because at a certain point, we learned that if I heard like a Y, da di da da, my finger would go right to the keyboard where it's at. Didn't even think about it, kind of. So we always talked about, well, why can't we make robots do this? Never did get that far.
Yeah.
But I did pursue that Mars, and Mars stands for Military Affiliated Radio Station. And in those days, we were handling traffic from soldiers in Vietnam to their families in America, and I thought that was good and a unique thing to do. So, in fact, I have this is a phone patch that we use to patch the soldiers to their families. So if you were in Vietnam and you wanted to talk to somebody in Texas, and the operator in Vietnam got a hold of me in Minnesota, I would make a long distance collect phone call from Minnesota to Texas. If you did that from Vietnam back in those days, it would have been astronomical.
Hmm.
So I would patch them through this phone patch, and it was an interesting challenge because when my transmitter is on, they're talking, and when it's off, they're not talking. So I would have to switch it back and forth. And for some people, it took a while to get the hang of that, but it worked out pretty good. But I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, and I did it for about 10 years, from late 1969 right through the 70s. And I sent on CW and phone patch both thousands of messages over that 10 years. So I found that very challenging and very rewarding, and I'm glad I did it. Today, Navy Mars doesn't even exist. Uh, Army Mars does, and Air Force Mars does, but they're pretty much gone all digital. And I like the idea of doing CW, but now it's all digital. So
Yeah.
that kind of explains how I became a ham radio operator.
Yeah, and you kind of answered your the next question on what piqued your interest with Morse code. So it sounds like you were really paid to learn Morse code before it really piqued your interest, correct?
Yeah, I would say it did, but when I got away from that work, uh, it kind of changed. I think America's communication heritage is very, very important, and and for that to remain, it takes young operators to come in and learn how to operate and love the hobby like I do. So I think at that point it was at least as much for uh, kind of documenting and saving the heritage of Morse code, going back to the telegraph days with the railroad and Western Union, and what I did with the military and that kind of thing. I'm amazed at how many people want to learn how to send and receive Morse code. I've been teaching for about 8 years, and it's more and more every year. So I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, Terry.
Mhm.
How did you become involved with CW Ops?
Well, CW Ops, interested me because they were an organization that was doing a whole lot of things and a whole lot of good things for ham radio. I mean, they were having contests and they gave out awards, and they continue today to teach high-speed internet through their CWTs and that kind of thing. They were very supporting of all operators, and they're international based. I joined CW Ops, and the requirement for joining is 3 members of CW Ops have to recommend you, and they have to be able to confirm that you had a QSO in excess of 25 words per minute. So it's not real difficult, but that's what they require to become a member.
Okay. And what kind of interested you, or how did you become an advisor with the CW Academy?
Well, once I learned about CW Ops, I found out about CW Academy, and I thought it was very interesting. It would be I like to teach, so I thought, well, that'd be fun, and I know Morse code, so it wouldn't be a real hardship on me. It wouldn't be a big burden. So I actually searched them out, and in the process goes you put in an application, and then they'll have a on Zoom interview with you, and then you'll start getting assignments for every one of their semesters. So it's an easy process to get in. It's good. I've seen operators come in that have only taken a beginner's class, and they become teachers, and they become great teachers. So it's available for a lot of levels.
Okay. And can you elaborate on instant character recognition in the beginner's CW Academy course?
Yeah, I think that's so important. Instant recognition. In order to get instant character recognition, you need to be able to know what's being sent, the character that's being sent in 4/10 of a second. That doesn't leave much time. That's milliseconds. So we're always working towards becoming a more competent ICR or instant character recognition operator. So the way we do that is what we don't want a beginner operator to do is thinking in their head, counting the dits and the dashes of the character. For example, V is da 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 da. We don't want them thinking a dot 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 dash. That doesn't work. What does work is when we teach what it sounds like to hear that character, da 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 da. What it sounds like to hear that character, and be able to figure out in your mind in a quick hurry what it is. And I don't have a class where I don't do that. I go around the class and I'll either send out a character like da da da, and the class will come back with whiskey, or I'll send out da 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 da, and they'll say bravo, and I'll do that one-on-one because I can detect if you're thinking too long about it. You really can't hide from not having instant character recognition. Let me do a little example of what I'm saying here.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to set this. IQ only goes down to 14 words per minute, but I'm going to do the quick brown fox because that's a good practice sentence because it contains all the letters in the alphabet. So I'm going to do this, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But I'm going to start out at 14 words per minute, and you'll see how easy it is, even at 14 words per minute, to count the dits and das. And here we go. etc. So you get the drift of what 14. So now we'll increase it to 20 words per minute. And here's where we usually get students set up to listen at 20 words per minute. And how do they do that without knowing all the characters or not having instant character recognition? We slow it down what's called a Farnsworth speed. So we're actually slowing the time down between the letters and the spacing between the letters and the timing between the words. So we may be sending at 20 words per minute, but we can slow it down to 5 words per minute. But if they're listening at 20 words per minute, the thinking is they're not going to be able to count dits and das. And here's that 20 words per minute. So here's what they'd be hearing. So you can see it's speeded up, and it makes it harder to try. You can't be, if you're thinking about the characters dits and das, they'll go right by you. You'll miss a whole row of them. So I'm going to increase it to from 20 to 25, and I'll just do a part of it so you can follow where we're going with this.
Okay.
Okay, well, now we're going to take it up to 30. Let me go one more, then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
This will be at 30. It's actually at 37. Okay, so if you follow me through this now at 20 words per minute, actually you're copying the letters, letter by letter by letter, and your conscious mind is doing that. So you can hear, let's say the word brown. I'm actually thinking BROWM, but it's instantaneously, and that's consciously doing that. But when I increase to 25 to 30, and I'm going to just do that same word, brown, at 30. You can't get, there's not enough time to get the letters again. So then your subconscious takes over. And the interesting thing about that is it always happens around 25 to 30 words per minute. And beginners aren't going to go into this, but it's interesting to know what you're having, what you have upcoming or going forward. So it's really a challenge, but it's an interesting challenge, especially if you know the mechanics. Our brain is inherently lazy. So, if we are sending at, let's say, 8 words per minute competently and with very few errors, and we increase that to, let's say, 12 words per minute, we start making errors because our brain hasn't made the connection yet. There isn't a connection between your brain and the key for increasing that speed. So even at low speeds, at operators that are at 5 words per minute, I get them to do that. I get them to get what I refer to as out of their comfortable zone and into their uncomfortable zone. So they'll practice at 8 words per minute, and then they'll go at 12 words per minute for maybe 15 minutes, and go back to 8 words per minute. It'll get progressively easier. So before you know it, you're at 12 words per minute, moving your uncomfortable zone up to maybe 16 or 18 words per minute. So you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very informative, and thank you for the hands-on on understanding the instant character recognition and the concept.
Yeah, it's such an important concept, and 4/10 of a second is a millisecond, so there just is no time to think. But if you use these concepts, it comes quicker than you think. Generally, the students that I have in my class are all on the air by the end of 2 months, by the end of the class.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about your class, Terry, is you encouraged weekly participation in the SST, the slow speed test,
That's a great thing.
and how we would all gather as a class via Zoom and hop on the radio and try and make as many contacts um, as well. All of us try and make as many contacts as we could, and
Yeah, you all did great. It is a good thing to do.
oh yeah, I still participate that in every week. So kind of why we scheduled this meeting at 6 p.m. this evening and not 7.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah,
I could send out some CWT or SSTs for you.
yeah. um, so, what is one of the most common items you see with beginner students that hampers their ability to learn code?
I think Elijah, it's what we talked about. It's instant character recognition. I've seen all kinds of ways people try to learn. I've seen one would use flashcards. So he'd hold up a flashcard and be a F on there, so it's a. But all he's doing is connecting those dits and das with his brain, and that won't work in short order. I've seen a lot of ways people have tried, but the best way is the way that we talked about tonight. And I would say that's the biggest crutch we need to get people by, because if it was easy, everybody'd be doing this. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a dedication to want to become a good Morse code operator. And I also teach a QRQ or high speed class, and those students are going around 40 words a minute. But nobody's in it just to show off that I can send high speed or anything like that. But any student you talk to that's in a QRQ or high speed class wants to be a real comfortable, competent operator at a different level. So usually, if they're at 40 words per minute, they're doing QSOs at maybe 25 words per minute, but they're very good at it because they've learned at 40 words per minute. So the receiving is good. They have head copy, sending is smooth. They don't have to be writing everything down. So usually works out really well.
Yeah, and that's one concept that really isn't elaborated much until you start taking CW Academy classes, is the head copy concept. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit on head
Yeah,
copy?
sure. Um, Rather than writing down, we teach to copy in your head copy, and it takes a lot of practice. And some people practice and practice, it doesn't come real well, but it'll come to somewhat. So instead of when you're listening and receiving Morse code, you're copying it. You're copying it in your head. And I had a problem when I was learning this, that I could copy the words in my head, but they would drop off, and then I'd forget them. So it just takes a lot of time and dedication, but it can be done. And if you get to be good at head copy, it's a fun way to do it because you never got to write anything. It's just like us having a conversation.
Yeah. And then lastly, Terry, what is one recommendation or helpful hint you can give to an individual wishing to pursue learning Morse code?
I would say, and we've all said this many times, but practice, practice, practice. That's so important. And when another thing is, like, even if you're driving a car and you see some letters in a license plate or on a billboard or something, I would always do those over in my mind. Or if I heard, if I was listening to a tape and I was alone, and and they were teaching the alphabet, for example, da 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 da, I would yell it out, da 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 da, as fast and as quick as I could, so I could get that instant character recognition. But if you do these techniques, it does work. It works well.
Yeah, it's a proven concept, and I'm glad that there's people who take time out of their busy schedules, such as you, Terry, and really help younger operators and older operators really be proficient at Morse code.
I can
So
see you doing the same, Elijah. I'm sure you will. And
someday.
yeah, you'll find it as rewarding as I do.
Yeah. So that was all my questions, Terry. Do you have anything you wish to add?
No, other than, like we talked before, I'm so happy that there's so much interest in learning to send and receive Morse code and to get involved there's so many avenues you can take off of that. Get involved in traffic nets, just all kinds of things. But I just think it's a wonderful hobby, I'm happy to hear that so many others do too.
Well, with that, Terry, we'll go ahead and conclude our session. And, once
Okay.
again, thank you for your time this evening and
Oh, it's a pleasure.
elaborating on the CW ops.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure, Elijah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Terry. 73.
Yeah, you take care now.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye now.